Stay until the end because what happened next, well, nobody saw it coming. Leave a comment telling me what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far this story travels. My son told me he sold my house to pay for his expenses. Said I had until Friday to pack my things and move to assisted living. I just smiled. He didn't know that the house wasn't actually in my name anymore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, 6 months before that October afternoon when my whole world turned upside down. My name is Sarah Bennett, and I'm 68 years old. For 37 years, I lived in the same 2-story colonial house on Maple Street, where I raised my son Matthew, where my husband Tom and I celebrated countless Christmases, where every creaking floorboard held a memory we'd built together. When Tom passed 5 years ago, the house became both my sanctuary and my companion. Maybe too big for one person, sure, but it was filled with a lifetime I wasn't ready to abandon. The garden where Tom proposed. The kitchen where Matthew took his first steps. The bedroom where we'd whispered our dreams to each other in the dark. Matthew had always been my pride, my only child. At 42, he was a successful financial consultant, married to Ashley, a real estate agent with perfectly highlighted hair and a smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. They lived 40 minutes away in a modern townhouse, and our relationship had been cordial. Sunday dinners once a month, birthday phone calls, the usual dance of adult children with busy lives. I understood. I did. He had his own family to think about. But 6 months ago, something shifted. It started small the way these things always do. Matthew began asking questions about the house. Questions that seemed innocent at first, almost caring. Mom, have you thought about downsizing? This place must be expensive to maintain. Wouldn't a nice apartment be easier? No more shoveling snow, no more worrying about the furnace. I'd laugh them off, change the subject to his work, his life, anything else. But the questions kept coming like water wearing away stone. Then the visits increased. Matthew and Ashley would drop by unannounced, something they'd never done before. Ashley's sharp eyes would assess every room like she was already measuring for new furniture. She'd comment on the dated kitchen, the inefficient heating system, how much the property taxes must be costing me. "Just worried about you, Sarah," she'd say, her voice dripping with concern that felt rehearsed. "A woman your age all alone in this big house. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one finds you for days?" I was 68, not 90. I still gardened 5 days a week, drove myself to book club every Thursday, volunteered at the library twice a week. My book club friends joked that I had more energy than women half my age. But Matthew and Ashley spoke to me like I was already senile, already helpless, like I was a problem that needed solving. The phone calls became more frequent, too. Matthew would call late at night, his voice tight with what he called concern. "Have you considered a reverse mortgage, Mom? Have you updated your will recently? Do you have a healthcare proxy in place?" Questions that felt less like care and more like inventory. I started finding things. A brochure for Sunset Gardens Senior Living on my kitchen counter after one of their visits. Ashley's business card paperclipped 2 articles about aging-in-place dangers. Matthew's browser history on the laptop he'd borrowed searches for convincing elderly parent to move and power of attorney for senior care. My stomach would twist every time I found something new. This was my son, my baby boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them bouquets. When had he become this person looking at me like I was an obstacle instead of his mother? 3 months ago, I had lunch with Robert Wilson, one of Matthew's colleagues from the firm. We'd met at several company events over the years, and I'd always found him kind, genuine. "Mrs. Bennett," he said carefully, stirring his coffee. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but is Matthew okay?" He seemed stressed lately, more than usual. My heart clenched. "What do you mean?" He took out a significant business loan last month, told the partners it was for expanding his client base, but Robert hesitated. "There's been talk. Some people think he's in over his head financially, and he's been missing deadlines, which isn't like him at all." I thanked Robert and left the cafe, my hands shaking. Financial trouble. Matthew was in financial trouble and he hadn't told me, hadn't asked for help. Instead, he was circling my house like a shark. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Ashley's social media. Her Instagram was public, a carefully curated highlight reel of their life. Designer handbags, restaurant check-ins at places where appetizers cost $40, and scattered throughout the last year posts about their dream vacation. Countdown posts to their 10th anniversary trip to the Maldives. Photos of luxury resort brochures. Hashtags like #dream vacation, #living our best life, #10 years strong. They'd been planning this for months, building expectations with their friends, their followers, their entire social circle. And then I found it. A post from 2 months ago, the comments now turned off. "We've worked so hard for this. Just finalized the booking. Cannot wait for November. They'd already paid for it. God knows how much. And now they needed the money back. My money. My house." Then came that Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in my garden, deadheading the last of the autumn roses when I heard the car pull up. Matthew's silver Mercedes. He climbed out alone, no Ashley this time, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach at the expression on his face. Not concern, not worry, something harder, something final. "Mom, we need to talk." He didn't wait for an invitation, just walked past me into the house. I followed, wiping soil from my hands, my heart hammering against my ribs. What had I done to deserve that tone? That look? He stood in my living room where I'd rocked him as a baby, where Tom and I had slow danced on our 30th anniversary, and the words came out flat, rehearsed. "I sold the house to cover our expenses. You have until Friday to pack your things." The world tilted. I actually gripped the back of Tom's old armchair to steady myself. What it? "Ashley and I found you a nice assisted living facility. 1 bedroom, all utilities included. You'll be safer there, happier." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The sale closes Friday," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "The new owners want to move in by the weekend. I've already hired movers for 3 p.m. They'll help you pack. We'll take care of everything. Safer, happier. We'll take care of everything." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. When had this happened? When had my sweet boy, who used to crawl into bed between Tom and me during thunderstorms, become this cold, calculating man standing in my home, telling me he'd stolen it out from under me? But here's what Matthew didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known in his desperation and his arrogance. The house wasn't actually in my name anymore. I smiled, a small, quiet smile that made him falter for just a moment. "Is that so?" I said softly. "Well, then I suppose you'd better tell me which assisted living facility." After Matthew left, after he'd handed me the Sunset Gardens brochure with a phone number written on the back, after he'd driven away in his expensive car, I sat in Tom's armchair for exactly 20 minutes. My hands trembled. My chest felt tight. But I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. Panic wouldn't help me now. I pulled out my laptop. Yes, I owned a laptop. Despite what my son seemed to think about my technological capabilities, I knew how to use the internet just fine. It took me 40 minutes and 3 phone calls, but I finally reached someone at the county clerk's office who could access the information. "Ma'am, according to our records, 247 Maple Street is held in a living trust, the Bennett Family Trust established in 2021. You're listed as the trustee." I thanked her and hung up a grim smile touching my lips. Of course. Tom and I had set up the trust 3 years before he died, following our estate attorney's advice. The house wasn't in my name. It was in the trust's name, with me as the controlling trustee and Matthew as the beneficiary upon my death. Matthew couldn't sell it without my signature, without my consent. But he'd tried anyway. Had he forged documents? Had he lied to a buyer? Or was this all an elaborate bluff to frighten me into signing the house over? I needed to know more. I needed help. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd hoped I'd never need. "Diane Morrison," a crisp voice answered. "Diane, it's Sarah Bennett. I need your help. My son just tried to steal my house." Diane Morrison arrived at my house the next morning at 9 sharp, carrying a leather briefcase and an expression that meant business. I'd known Diane for over 40 years, since she and Tom studied together at Georgetown Law. She'd built a reputation as someone who didn't lose cases, especially when family members tried to exploit the elderly. She was 62 now, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Tell me everything," she said, settling into the same armchair where Matthew had delivered his ultimatum just 24 hours earlier. I walked her through it all. The 6 months of intrusive questions, Ashley's assessments of my property, the late-night phone calls, the brochures left behind, and finally the bombshell announcement about selling the house. Diane took notes, her jaw tightening with each detail. "Do you have any documentation, texts, emails, recordings?" I shook my head. It all happened so fast. But Diane, here's the thing, he can't actually sell the house, can he? It's in the trust. Not without your signature as trustee. No. She pulled out her laptop. Which means either he's forged documents or he's bluffing to pressure you into signing. Let me make some calls. If he's filed anything with the county, we'll know. While Diane worked, I made coffee and tried to steady my nerves. What would Matthew do when he realized I hadn't packed, that I hadn't left? He'd said the sale closed Friday. He'd said movers were coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Matthew. Mom, have you started packing? The movers will be there at 3 p.m. on Friday. Make sure you're ready. My hands shook as I showed Diane the message. Don't respond yet, she advised. Let's see if movers actually show up. If they do, I'll handle it. That evening, I did something I should have done months ago. I went to my book club. The Maple Street Literary Society had been meeting every Thursday for 12 years. 6 women, all between 60 and 75, gathering to discuss everything from classic literature to contemporary mysteries. Helen Pritchard, a retired nurse with warm brown eyes and a laugh that could fill a room. Clara Jennings, whose husband had been a police officer tough as nails but with a heart of pure gold. Patricia Moore, a former social worker who'd seen everything and judged nothing. We were supposed to discuss our current book, but 15 minutes in, Helen set down her wine glass and looked at me directly. Sarah, you've been distracted all evening. What's wrong? And I broke. I told them everything. The attempted fraud, the manipulation, the texts, the movers scheduled for Friday. I half expected judgment. Pity, maybe. Suggestions that Matthew must have my best interests at heart. But what I received instead was something far more valuable. Oh, honey. Helen reached across and squeezed my hand. My nephew tried something similar with his mother-in-law last year. You're doing exactly the right thing standing up to him. Clara's eyes flashed with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd spent decades fighting injustice. Do you have security cameras? Because you should. Document everything. My daughter went through this with her ex-husband, Patricia added. The manipulation tactics gifts tears anger, they're straight out of the abuser's playbook. You're not overreacting, Sarah. You're protecting yourself. Helen leaned forward. You're not alone in this. We're here, whatever you need. Over the next week, my book club became my fortress. Helen came by twice with homemade soup, staying for tea and bringing practical nurse's advice about staying healthy through stress. Clara's son-in-law installed security cameras at cost, teaching me how to access the footage from my phone. Patricia connected me with a support group for seniors dealing with financial exploitation by family members. I attended my first meeting at the community center 3 days before the movers were scheduled to arrive. 12 people sat in a circle, all dealing with similar betrayals by children's spouses or relatives. My daughter told me I was being selfish, an elderly man named George shared. Said I was ruining her life by not giving her control of my finances. I actually believed her for a while. Mine told me she'd put me in a nursing home if I didn't sign over my house, a woman named Dorothy added. Said no one would visit me there. Their stories echoed mine, validated my experience, strengthened my resolve. When I returned home that evening, I found another email from Ashley. Sarah, your silence is very hurtful. We're trying to help you and you're treating us like criminals. We won't beg anymore. Don't come crying to us when you're all alone and realize we were right. I read it without emotion, forwarded it to Diane and deleted it. I wasn't alone. I had my book club, my support group, my attorney, my community. Matthew and Ashley had tried to convince me that they were all I had, but they were wrong. Friday came. At 2:45 p.m., exactly as Matthew had promised, a white moving van pulled up to my curb. I watched from my living room window as 2 men climbed out checking a clipboard. Diane stood beside me, phone already recording. Let them knock, she said quietly. Don't open the door until they do. The knock came. 3 sharp raps. My heart hammered, but I remained still. Diane opened the door, her attorney face firmly in place. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Diane Morrison, Mrs. Bennett's legal counsel. May I see your work order? The men exchanged confused glances. The older one, a heavy-set man in his 50s, handed over a sheet of paper. Diane examined it carefully, then looked up with steel in her eyes. This work order was placed by Matthew Bennett, but he has no legal authority to initiate a move from this property. The house is held in a trust with Sarah Bennett as the sole trustee. I'm afraid you've been hired under false pretenses. But Mr. Bennett said his mother agreed to move, the younger mover said, looking genuinely distressed. He said she was going into assisted living. Mrs. Bennett has agreed to no such thing, Diane said firmly. In fact, she had no knowledge of your company being hired. I'd suggest you contact Mr. Bennett for payment because you won't be moving anything from this address today. The movers left confused and clearly annoyed at having their time wasted. As their van pulled away, another car arrived, Matthew's Mercedes, and beside it, Ashley's white SUV. I watched my son climb out of his car, his face already red with anger. He must have gotten a call from the moving company. Ashley followed her expression, tight and calculating. Diane stepped onto my porch before they could reach the door. Mr. Bennett? Mrs. Bennett? Her voice was ice. I am Diane Morrison, representing Sarah Bennett. I need to inform you that any attempt to remove property from or claim ownership of this house without Mrs. Bennett's written consent constitutes attempted fraud and elder abuse. Matthew's face went white. Who the hell are you? Mom, what is this? I appeared in the doorway behind Diane, feeling stronger than I had in months. Diane is my attorney, Matthew. She's here because you tried to sell my house without my permission. I was helping you. Matthew's voice rose, his composure cracking. You can't take care of this place anymore. You're putting yourself in danger. That's not your decision to make, Diane said coldly. Mrs. Bennett is of sound mind and perfectly capable of managing her own affairs. What you've attempted here is illegal. Ashley grabbed Matthew's arm, whispering urgently, but he shook her off. I'm your son. Everything you have should be mine eventually anyway. You're just being selfish holding on to this house when we... He stopped abruptly, realizing what he'd almost said. When you need what, Matthew? I asked quietly. Money for your Maldives vacation. Money to cover the business loan you took out. His eyes widened. How did you... I may be 68, but I'm not senile. I can still make phone calls. I can still do research. I stepped forward, feeling decades of motherly patience crystallizing into something harder. You tried to steal my home to fund your vacation. You were willing to make me homeless for a beach resort. Mom, that's not we were going to take care of you. The assisted living place is nice. A one-bedroom facility where I'd lose my independence, my memories, my entire life, while you and Ashley posted Instagram photos from the Maldives paid for with my house. Ashley's carefully constructed mask cracked. Maybe if you weren't so stubborn about accepting help, we wouldn't have had to... Had to what? Diane interrupted. Commit elder fraud, because that's what this is, Mrs. Bennett. Matthew and Ashley stood on my walkway, their plans shattered, their desperation visible. And for just a moment, I saw something in my son's eyes that made me pause. Not just anger, not just shame, fear, real, raw, terrified fear, like a drowning man watching his last lifeline slip away. Matthew, I said softly, what's really going on? But he turned away, Ashley pulling him back toward their cars. You'll regret this, Mom, he called back, his voice breaking. When you're alone and you need us, you'll regret this. They drove away, leaving me standing in my doorway with Diane beside me and a question burning in my mind. What was my son so desperately afraid of? The night after the movers left, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Matthew's face as he drove away, that look of pure terror beneath the anger. It haunted me. This wasn't just about greed. Something else was happening. Something I didn't understand. At 3 a.m, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and opened my laptop. If my son wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I started with the basics. Matthew's LinkedIn showed nothing unusual: professional photos, client testimonials, the polished image of success. But Robert Wilson's words echoed in my mind. He's been missing deadlines, taking extended lunches, coming back looking wrecked. I pulled up Ashley's Instagram again, scrolling more carefully this time. The Maldives posts were there, of course, but as I looked closer, I noticed something. The frequency of her posts had dropped dramatically over the past year. And when she did post, the photos were different, more filtered, more carefully cropped. In one photo from 3 months ago, Ashley at a charity gala, all smiles in a designer dress, I noticed something in the background. Just barely visible on her wrist, a medical bracelet. My heart skipped. I zoomed in, but the image was too grainy to read. Still, the white band was unmistakable. I kept scrolling. Another photo, this one from her car. And there, hanging from her rearview mirror, a hospital parking pass. Oh God, I whispered to my empty kitchen. The manipulation campaign started the next day. An email from Ashley arrived at 6 a.m. I read it over my morning coffee. Dear Sarah, I haven't been able to sleep. I keep thinking about how our family has fallen apart and it breaks my heart. I know Matthew made mistakes in how he approached everything with the house. But Sarah, he loves you so much. He worries about you constantly, about your safety, your health, being alone in that big house. I worry too. You're all alone, and what if something happened? What if you fell and no one found you for days? We just want to take care of you the way family is supposed to. Please, can we just meet for coffee? No lawyers, no drama. Just talk like we used to. I miss you. Matthew misses you terribly. With love, Ashley. The words were designed to make me feel guilty, selfish, unreasonable. I forwarded it to Diane and sent a brief reply. Ashley, I'm open to conversation after legal matters are resolved. Her response came within minutes. Legal matters, Sarah, we're family. You're treating us like criminals when all we did was try to help. This is what that lawyer has done, turned you against your own son. Please just have coffee with us. No lawyers. I didn't respond. 2 days later, flowers arrived. An enormous bouquet of roses, my favorite. The card read, Mom, I'm sorry for everything. Can we please talk, your loving son, Matthew? They were beautiful. I put them in water, but I didn't call. Then came the voicemails. Mom, it's me. I made a mistake. Okay, I admit it. But you're my mother. Doesn't that count for something? Call me back. Please. Another one, his voice different, harder. Fine. Be stubborn. See where it gets you when you really need help, and there's no one there. And then Ashley's voice sharp and accusatory. You're being manipulated by that lawyer, Sarah. She just wants your money. We're your real family. We're the ones who will be there when you actually need us. Think about that. I documented everything. Every email, every voicemail, every text. Forwarded them all to Diane's files. But the isolation was harder than I'd expected. Brian was right about one thing: he was my only child. The Sunday dinners had stopped. The phone calls I'd grown accustomed to, even when they annoyed me, had ceased. The house felt emptier than it had in 5 years. That's when I called Robert Wilson again. Robert, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, Mrs. Bennett. You said Matthew seemed stressed. Have you noticed anything else? Anything unusual? A long pause. Too long. Mrs. Bennett, he's been taking extended lunches. 2-3 hours sometimes. And last week I found him in the office bathroom. He'd been crying. I've never seen him like that, not in 15 years of working together. My chest tightened. Do you know why? No, ma'am, but whatever it is, it's destroying him. He's a good man, Mrs. Bennett. I know what he tried to do was wrong, but something's really wrong. After I hung up, I sat very still. Matthew crying. Matthew taking long lunches. Matthew terrified. I made a decision. The next day, I hired a private investigator. James Rodriguez came, recommended by Clara's nephew, discreet professional, good at finding answers. I need to know where my son goes during the day, I told him. What he's doing, who he's seeing. James charged me $500 for a week of surveillance. 3 days later, he called me. Mrs. Bennett, I have information. Can I come by? James sat in my living room, a manila folder in his hands. Your son has been visiting St. Mary's Hospital, the oncology wing, 3 times this week alone. The room tilted. Oncology. Yes, ma'am. He parks in the visitor lot, goes inside for about 90 minutes, comes out looking, well, rough. And Mrs. Bennett Ashley's car is there too, registered in the oncology patient parking. After James left, I sat in Tom's armchair and cried. Cancer. Someone had cancer. But who? Matthew looked healthy. And Ashley? Ashley posted constantly about her perfect life, her yoga classes, her green smoothies. Unless it was all a lie. Unless the filters and the careful cropping and the designer clothes were hiding something terrible. I knew what I had to do. I broke every rule. Ignored Diane's advice. Drove to St. Mary's Hospital the next afternoon and parked in the visitor lot. I waited 4 hours. At 5:30, Matthew emerged from the oncology wing entrance. His face was gray. His eyes were red and swollen. He carried a folder of papers clutched against his chest like a shield. I watched him walk to his car, watched him collapse against the steering wheel, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I got out of my car, walked across the parking lot, knocked on his window. Matthew's head snapped up. When he saw me, every emotion crossed his face at once. Terror, shame, relief, desperation. Mom, how did you... Get out of the car, Matthew. We sat on a bench outside the hospital. October evening, leaves falling around us in gold and amber. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Matthew's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. Do you remember the year after Dad died? My hands went cold. Matthew, you were devastated. We all were. But you, Mom, you stopped eating, stopped leaving the house. And then one night I came over to check on you and found you in the bathtub. There were pills. So many pills. The memory crashed over me. The darkness. The despair. The feeling that I couldn't live in a world without Tom. You saved me, I whispered. I took you to the hospital. They admitted you to psychiatric care. 3 months of treatment, therapy, medication. It saved your life. Insurance covered it. No, Matthew's voice cracked. Insurance covered 2 weeks. The rest at $87,000. I took out a second mortgage on our townhouse. Told Ashley it was for a business investment. I couldn't breathe. We've been drowning ever since Mom. The mortgage payments, the debt, trying to keep up appearances at work, trying to maintain the life we'd built. And I couldn't tell you. I couldn't let you know that saving your life had ruined mine financially because you needed to heal. You needed to believe you weren't a burden. Tears streamed down my face. Matthew, why didn't you just ask me for help? Because I already took from you once. His voice broke completely. I already stole your peace of mind, your year of grief, your recovery. I couldn't keep being the son who needs saving. I had to fix it myself. And when I saw the house just sitting there worth so much money and you all alone in it, I thought I could solve everything. Get you somewhere safe, pay off our debts, finally breathe again. The Maldives. Ashley's dream. We booked it a year ago when things were better. Paid in full non-refundable $47,000, and then everything started falling apart and I needed that money back so desperately, but we couldn't cancel and I thought if I could sell the house I could fix everything. I reached for his hand. He was crying openly now, this 42-year-old man, my baby boy. You should have told me. I couldn't. I can't keep being your burden, Mom. I'm supposed to be the one taking care of you. My phone buzzed. Matthew's phone buzzed at the same moment. He looked at the screen and his face drained of all color. It's Ashley. The chemo session. She collapsed. I have to go. He started to stand, but I grabbed his arm. Chemo. Matthew looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the weight of the world. Stage 3 ovarian cancer, diagnosed 18 months ago. I followed Matthew into the emergency room. He didn't stop me. Maybe he was too tired to fight anymore. Maybe he needed his mother. Ashley was in a bed, pale as the sheets, an IV drip in her arm. When she saw me, her eyes widened. What is she doing here? Ash, she knows. About everything. Ashley turned her face away, tears streaming down her cheeks. A doctor entered, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, according to her badge. Young, compassionate eyes, exhausted. Mrs. Bennett is stable, but her white blood cell count is critically low. We need to adjust the chemo protocol again. What kind of cancer? I heard myself ask. Dr. Walsh looked at Ashley, who nodded weakly. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. We've been fighting it for 18 months now. Everything clicked into place. The Instagram perfection hiding the reality. The Maldives obsession a bucket list trip. The desperation running out of time. I sat down heavily in the chair beside Ashley's bed. Why didn't you tell me? Ashley laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Tell you, you barely tolerated me on a good day, Sarah. Perfect Sarah with her perfect house and her perfect memories of perfect Tom. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I'm dying, can you pretend to care? Ashley, the Maldives was supposed to be before I couldn't travel anymore, before I looked like this. She gestured at herself, gaunt, pale, tethered to machines. Before everyone could see that I'm dying. Matthew worked so hard, took out loans for treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Experimental therapy that gave us 6 more months. But we're broke, and I'm still dying. And that stupid trip was the one thing I wanted before. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Matthew stood at the foot of her bed, his face in his hands. I just wanted to give her something perfect. One perfect memory before I lose her. I looked at my son, at his dying wife, at the desperation that had driven them to try to steal my home. They hadn't done it out of greed. They'd done it out of love. Desperate, misguided, wrong love. But love nonetheless. Ashley's eyes met mine, glassy with pain medication and exhaustion. I'm sorry, Sarah, for hating you, for being jealous that you had Tom for 40 years and I'll get Matthew for maybe 10, for trying to take your house. I'm so tired of being scared. And I wanted one thing to be beautiful before the end. I stood up, my mind reeling, my heart breaking. I need to make a call. I left the room, left them both watching me go, probably certain they'd lost me forever. But in the hallway, I pulled out my phone and called Diane Morrison. Diane, I need to know something about the trust. Everything Tom put in writing. Every document, every provision, every word. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Of course, Sarah, what's going on? I need to know if I can help my son, and I need to know what Tom would want me to do. Because somewhere in those legal documents in the trust Tom had created to protect me, there might be a way to save my family, or what was left of it. Diane Morrison's office smelled like old books and lemon furniture polish. She'd been practicing law for 35 years in the same building, and every surface told a story. I sat across from her desk while she pulled out a banker's box. Tom's estate documents. I'd seen most of them before, signed what needed signing, filed them away in my memory as handled. But I'd never looked. Not really. Sarah, you've reviewed all the trust documents before. What exactly are you looking for? Tom was meticulous, Diane. You know that. If he set up the trust this specific way, there was a reason. I need to understand his thinking. We went through everything. The property deed, the trust agreement, beneficiary designations, tax documents. And then Diane pulled out a sealed envelope from the bottom of the box. I'd forgotten about this, she said softly. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper. Tom's handwriting on the front, for Sarah to be opened if Matthew ever needs it. My hands shook as I broke the seal. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, our boy is in trouble. I don't know what kind, money, health, marriage, life's cruel randomness, but I know my son. He takes after you, my love. Too proud to ask for help. Too strong to show weakness. The trust is structured to protect you from everyone, including Matthew. But it's also structured so you can choose to help him if he truly needs it. Article 7, Section 3. The trustee may distribute up to 50% of the principal to beneficiaries before her death, provided she maintains sufficient assets for her own care. Translation, in case the legal language makes your eyes glaze over. You can give Matthew half while you're still alive, if you choose to. I'm writing this because I know how we raised him. To be independent, to stand on his own 2 feet, to never be a burden. And sweetheart, I'm afraid that if something happens to me, if he faces something terrible, he won't come to you. He'll try to handle it alone. He'll make mistakes. If that day comes and you're reading this, please remember, he's our son. He's human, and humans stumble. The house is just wood and walls, Sarah. Beautiful walls, yes, filled with memories that matter. But family is what built those memories in the first place. Don't lose our boy trying to save boards and nails. That said, and you know I have to say this, don't let him take advantage either. Make him earn it. Make him learn from it. Make him understand the weight of what he did wrong. You'll know what's right. You always do. I trust you, my love. I always have. Tell Matthew I'm proud of him, even when he stumbles. Especially then, because that's when character shows. All my love, always, Tom. P.S. Matthew's middle name is Thomas. He carries me with him everywhere. Help him carry it better. I cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place I'd kept locked since Tom died. Diane sat quietly letting me grieve. When I finally looked up, she handed me a box of tissues and waited. He knew, I whispered. He knew Matthew would struggle. He knew I'd need permission to help him. Tom was a wise man. What do I do, Diane? She leaned back in her chair. What does your heart tell you? I thought about Matthew crying in his car, Ashley dying in a hospital bed, the desperation that had driven them to hurt me. I thought about Tom's words, don't lose our boy trying to save boards and nails. I want to help them, but they need to understand what they did was wrong. Really understand. Not just apologize because it's convenient. Diane smiled. Then let's structure this properly, with boundaries, with consequences, with a path forward that protects everyone. 3 days later, we met at my dining room table. Matthew and Ashley sat on one side looking terrified. Ashley had insisted on coming despite her weakness, leaning heavily on Matthew's arm. Diane and I sat across from them. Matthew's attorney, James Kirkland, sat at the end, looking like he wished he were anywhere else. I placed Tom's letter on the table between us. I found this in the trust documents. Your father wrote it 4 years ago. Matthew picked it up with shaking hands. I watched his eyes move across the page, watched his face crumble as he read his father's words. When he finished, he couldn't speak, just held the letter and cried silently. Ashley read over his shoulder, tears streaming down her gaunt face. Finally, I broke the silence. I know about everything now. The $87,000 for my psychiatric care, Ashley's cancer, the experimental treatments, the debt, all of it. Matthew's voice came out hoarse. Mom, let me finish. I kept my tone steady. What you did was wrong, Matthew. Illegal. You tried to steal my home. You manipulated me. You scared me. And I need you to fully understand that before we move forward. I know. God, Mom, I know. Do you? Because suffering doesn't excuse cruelty, Matthew. Being desperate doesn't give you permission to hurt people, even people you love. Ashley spoke up, her voice weak but clear. You're right. We were wrong. Completely wrong. I convinced myself we were helping you, that you'd be better off in assisted living. But that was a lie I told myself to justify what we were doing. I looked at this dying woman and saw for the first time genuine remorse. Your father, I said, tapping the letter, left me a way to help you, if I choose to. So here's what I'm proposing. Diane slid documents across the table. I'm selling the house. Matthew's head snapped up. What? No, Mom, you don't have to. Let me finish. I'm selling it and moving to a smaller condo. Something more manageable that I actually choose for myself. The proceeds will be divided as follows: 40% to you and Ashley with strict conditions, 35% to my retirement and care, 25% to the Elder Protection Foundation. Mom, that's too much. We can't. The conditions, I continued firmly, are these. First, Matthew pleads guilty to attempted fraud. You'll get probation, no jail time, but you own what you did legally. Second, the money goes toward Ashley's treatment. Not the Maldives, not debt consolidation. Treatment. Ashley started to cry harder. Third, you complete a financial counseling program and show me proof. You learn to live within your means. Fourth, we do family therapy. Once a week for a year minimum. We rebuild trust properly. Matthew stared at me. You're helping us after everything. I'm helping you learn. There's a difference. You don't get to feel good about this, Matthew. You get to feel responsible. You take the help, you own the mistake, you do better. And the Maldives? Ashley whispered. I pulled out another document. I'm gifting you $12,000 from my portion. You reschedule the trip, but I'm coming with you. Ashley's eyes widened. What? You're dying, Ashley. I'm not. I have time. You don't. And maybe if we're all together in a beautiful place, we can start to build something better with whatever time you have left. The silence in the room was profound. Finally, Matthew spoke, his voice breaking. Why would you do this after what we did? Because your father asked me to. Because you saved my life 5 years ago. Because you're my son and I love you even when you're at your worst. But Matthew, I leaned forward, holding his gaze. This is the only time. You understand, the only time I save you from your own mistakes. After this, you stand on your own. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not doing this out of obligation or guilt or because you manipulated me. I'm doing it because I choose to, and that choice comes with expectations. Diane pushed the papers forward. Sign here, all of you. As Matthew signed, his hand shaking, Diane pulled out one more document. There's something else Sarah should know. She looked at me. Tom filed an amendment to his will separately from the trust 1 week before he died. I'd forgotten it was in a different file. She handed me the paper. Upon Sarah's passing, the Bennett home and all remaining assets to be divided, 50% to Matthew Thomas Bennett, 50% to Elder Advocacy Foundation in Sarah's name. Matthew had never been cut out of the will at all. Tom had always intended to provide for him, but only after I was gone, after I'd lived my full life, after I'd been cared for. Tom had been protecting us both all along. I looked at my son. Your father loved you. He always planned to take care of you. But he wanted me safe first. Matthew put his face in his hands and sobbed. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I walked around the table and held my 42-year-old son while he cried. I know, baby. I know. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new condo looking out at the city lights. The condo was smaller, yes, but it was beautiful. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, a small garden space where I'd already planted roses. No stairs to worry about. No furnace to maintain. Just enough space for me and my life. On my mantel sat a photo from the Maldives. The 3 of us on a white sand beach. Matthew with his arm around Ashley. Ashley thin but smiling, genuinely smiling. Me in a sun hat squinting at the camera, looking happier than I'd felt in years. It hadn't been perfect. Ashley got sick twice during the trip. Matthew and I had argued one night about boundaries. But there were also moments of grace. Watching the sunset together. Ashley laughing at something Matthew said. Feeling like a family again, however broken. Ashley's latest scan showed the cancer was stable. Not gone, but not growing. The experimental treatment paid for with the house money was buying her time. Maybe another year. Maybe 2. It wasn't a miracle. But it was something. Matthew came for dinner every Sunday now. We were in therapy, learning how to talk to each other again, how to trust. It was slow, painful work. Some weeks we barely made progress. Last week he told me about the nonprofit they were starting. The Thomas Bennett Foundation, named after his father to help families dealing with cancer costs. We want to make something good from all this, he'd said. Turn our mess into something that helps people. I'd cried. Tom would have loved that. My phone rang, Matthew's name on the screen. Hi, honey. Mom, I just wanted to tell you we got our first donation to the foundation. $5,000 from an anonymous donor. That's wonderful. And Mom, I've been sober from debt for 90 days, paid off the credit cards. We're on a strict budget. Ashley even deleted Instagram. I smiled. I'm proud of you. I love you, Mom. I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you too, Matthew. After we hung up, I walked back inside and looked around my new home. It wasn't 247 Maple Street. It didn't have Tom's chair or the kitchen where Matthew took his first steps or the bedroom where we'd whispered our dreams. But it had something better. Peace. Safety. A future I'd chosen. The house on Maple Street had sold to a young family with 3 kids. I'd driven by once and seen bicycles in the yard, chalk drawings on the driveway, a swing set being assembled. It was alive again. I didn't regret selling it, but I didn't regret fighting for it either. Because fighting for that house taught me something. Sometimes love looks like boundaries. Sometimes it looks like consequences. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it looks like second chances. But it's never easy. It's never clean. And it's never perfect. Matthew and I will spend the rest of our lives rebuilding what was broken. Some days are good. Some days the old resentments bubble up. Trust isn't rebuilt in grand gestures. It's rebuilt in small moments. Honest conversations, kept promises. Ashley might have a year left. Maybe 2. We're making the most of it. And me, I'm learning that home isn't a place. It's not wood and walls and memories trapped in floorboards. Home is the people you choose to keep building with even after everything falls apart. Especially then.